People that work in the wedding industry, have you ever seen a couple and immediately thought, this ends in divorce? And why? I often witness it. You know how people say that 50% of marriages end in divorce? Well, I can pretty much predict who's going to be part of that 50% with about 98% accuracy. I work as a wedding cake baker for a living. I own my own bakery, but I have also worked in a country club kitchen doing basically the same thing, plus other pastry chef duties on the day of weddings. I have seen both the bride and groom during the tasting design consultation and on their wedding day. I see how they interact when they are together, but also when under stress on the big day. I have seen everything. Lots of cheating, lots of drunk people, lots of terrible mothers. One time, I had a mama's boy who ignored his wife during their cake tasting to cuddle his mother and hand feed her cake. His mother was not supposed to be there, and you could tell the bride was angry. By the end of it, he had kissed his mother on the lips multiple times. This was a clear red flag for divorce. I have also seen a woman complain and criticize everything her fiancé said. Any suggestions he had for what he liked resulted in him being called stupid. Anytime she opened her mouth, he would cower and flinch. Their cake actually got canceled about a month before the wedding, so we did not get anything but the deposit, even though we had started baking it. It was the first time I had lost out on money, but I was relieved. Once I had an arrogant Turkish man marrying into a Bangladeshi family. The bride was sweet and about 10 years older than him. She came from a fairly well-off family, and I generally got the impression that this being a Turkish-South Asian marriage was kind of a big deal, even though they are both Muslim. But since she was in her 30s, they wanted her to get married, so they allowed it. This guy complained about everything during the planning process, especially over them not serving alcohol. He was generally rude to us, but he was just straight up cruel to her. At one point when we were meeting, I asked about her wedding dress because South Asian wedding dresses are gorgeous. She showed me her amazing dress and he said straight up, "I don't know why she picked that one. She looks fat and old in it. Every other woman is going to be more beautiful than her on her wedding day." He then showed me this dress he had picked out, which wasn't traditional South Asian style at all and was very Western and very ugly. It basically made the model in the picture look naked. It was so sheer. When she said something about how no mosque would let her in dressed like that and that her traditions were important, he just sneered and said she should get over it, and that her traditions weren't that important. This was another clear red flag for divorce. I found out later that they didn't last a day. From the way the servers tell it, midway through the reception, the guy raised his hand to his new bride when she asked him a question about being drunk, and she flinched and turned away, protecting her face. He grabbed her by the arm and ripped her around, angry. Her mother and aunt were standing 3 feet from her and lost their minds, realizing what must have been happening. His response when her mother started to lose her mind was to hit her. So in the middle of this very big 600-plus person Bangladeshi wedding, this 20-something outsider dickhead that no one wanted her to marry smacked a well-respected woman in their community. There was a brawl, the cops were called, marriage was annulled. As a photographer, I have been right a few times for sure. I had a groom who was quite full of himself and always wanted to be seen as a great guy, but really he was just self-absorbed. He constantly talked about being a chef and loved telling people that. The engagement and marriage were quick, and I got the feeling that it was rushed. The wedding and reception were set to take place at the groom's parents' home, and his mom and sister had a lot of input. Unfortunately, the bride was constantly shut down whenever she tried to voice her opinion. On the day of the wedding, I arrived to shoot the bride getting ready. She was alone with the hair and makeup person, whom I initially mistook for her friend. Her bridesmaids were nowhere to be found, and after 2 hours of waiting, she couldn't get a hold of them. The makeup person eventually left, and I helped the bride put on her veil and shoes. I felt so bad for her and also awkward as hell. This was supposed to be her big day, yet she was left alone with a stranger putting on her veil and trying to make her feel great. Finally, the bridesmaids arrived, and to the bride's surprise, the maid of honor was the groom's sister. When the bride asked why they didn't tell her they were out for breakfast or bring her food, they got upset with her and accused her of being a Bridezilla. As it turns out, the groom and groomsmen were invited to the breakfast, and they had started drinking. By 11:30 a.m., the bridal party was already half drunk, and none of the bridesmaids were even dressed or had their hair or makeup done. The wedding was set to take place in just 30 minutes. I didn't get any photos of the bridesmaids, but I did manage to take some great shots of the groomsmen, who were all dressed up and feeling great due to the alcohol. The wedding itself went smoothly, but we were supposed to go to a nearby beach and trail for photos, which never happened because the groom spent the entire time talking to every single person in attendance, drinking all the while. The meal took forever, and the sun was about to set. I told the couple that we had to go since I had 0 photos of them alone together. The groom said, yeah, after the speeches. He proceeded to give a long, rambling speech that had little to do with his new bride while she sat alone and defeated, wondering what she had gotten herself into. By the time he finished, it was already dark. The bride looked at me and said, "You can just go home now." The groom continued chugging beer and laughing loudly while his bride sat alone. I delivered the images, but they didn't pay the remaining amount, giving me a million excuses. After a month, I threatened to go through small claims court, and the next day, the groom sent me an EFT with an angry message about hounding him and giving me a bad review. I saw the bride 6 months later at a restaurant, and she told me that she had left him. I saw him a few months ago working at a downtown liquor store, and apparently being a chef didn't work out for him. A friend told me that he had been fired from 3 restaurants. He ignored me while flirting with another woman, and just before we left, he smoothly said to her, "I'm off in 5 minutes. I'll walk with you to that store. I'll tell Charlie to put that delicious cab sauv aside for you. Good luck, lady." I worked my way through university as a wedding musician. Here's the partial story of the wedding that ended my career, as I never did another one after that. The mother of the groom insisted on singing a solo, as she believed it was her special day too. She chose Ave Maria, and I was to accompany her on the piano. I don't recommend this song for inexperienced singers, as it requires good breath control and dynamic vocal range. The woman had been told all her life that she sang like an angel and frequently performed at local karaoke events. We could only practice together 2 days before the wedding, and I immediately knew something was off. Her son was present as moral support, and he had left the fiancé in the car. As soon as the mother started singing, it was clear that she had never sung Ave Maria before, or any song for that matter. To put it bluntly, she could not sing. She insisted that the arrangement wasn't in her vocal range. I lowered it to a register she could handle, but it was a very difficult key for me to play, and it took me a minute to adjust. She started screaming at me for being unprofessional and burst into hysterical sobs, to the point where her son had to catch her as she went into an exaggerated swoon. When I suggested a different song, she screamed at me that as an accompanist I was supposed to make her sound good, declared that the day was ruined, and ran out of the church. The next day, she agreed to return and try again, but it was the day of the main rehearsal. Any music practice typically doesn't take place during this time, as moving a wedding party through the motions is complicated and can take time to get right. This woman took the entire time slot trying to learn how to sing. The son spent the time trying to inflate her ego and telling her how lovely she sounded. The fiancé sat silently in the back. Finally, I could tell everyone was getting frustrated, so I stepped out of my strictly designated role as an accompanist to try to give her some on-the-spot voice lessons. In the process, I demonstrated by singing the opening phrase. The woman literally stomped her foot like a toddler and screamed at me for trying to upstage her and steal her solo. The son handled it by telling her how much better than me she sounded and how much of a difficult person I was for trying to show her up. I'm paraphrasing here. I would never let anyone get away with calling me a difficult person for any amount of money. The actual wedding rehearsal never happened, and she never got all the way through the song. On the day of the wedding, 10 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start, she interrupted me while I was playing filler music, as guests were arriving but before anything had started. She tried to insist I go into a back room and practice with her. I declined as politely as possible, indicating the guests who were arriving. She stormed off in a huff, and the groom ran after her. He spent so long trying to soothe her that the ceremony started 40 minutes late. When her time finally came, she refused to go up and sing, causing a huge scene and flying off the handle about how everyone just wants to see her fail and that the bride would just love that. She stormed out for the last time, so I just played the instrumental, although I was very tempted to sing it as a final screw you to the mother. I heard through the grapevine that the bride never moved in with her new husband, and the marriage was annulled soon after. Wedding planner here. Where should I start? I have tons of stories, but this is the craziest one. I'm a destination wedding planner, so I usually plan everything by email and phone calls. I only meet the couple once they arrive at the destination, about 4 days before the wedding. The day they arrived, I welcomed them and let them rest. Our meeting was set for the next day. The next day came, and I was waiting for them at my office. Keep in mind, I'm at the resort they are staying at. I received a call from the receptionist. She was crying and telling me how the groom's mom is crazy. She told me she locked her in her room because there was no premium wine brand in the freezer, which is definitely not included. When the receptionist went to the room to try to calm her down, she just locked her in. I was just hearing this when the bride, crying a lot, came to my office, but the groom was nowhere to be seen. She said she hated her mother-in-law, and the groom was super drunk since the day before, so she couldn't convince him to be at the meeting. I asked her if she wanted to try again later, but she said no. She was super sure about it, and we checked the wedding plans together. They stated that they didn't want a rehearsal for the ceremony, so we just went to the venues to see everything. The groom showed up at my office 5 hours later for the meeting, drunk. So I explained that we already had it, and he left super mad. On the wedding day, the bride cried the entire morning, talking about how much she hated her mother-in-law and how she was super crazy. I knew this after the receptionist's call. The resort even thought about kicking her out, but she apologized and they let her stay. Bad idea. I checked everything like I always do. I'm a little sergeant when it comes to times and planning. It was time, and we had everything set up and ready, but the groom was nowhere with the rest of his family and groomsmen. The bride was ready in her room with her bridesmaids, and her family was at the venue, but we couldn't start without the groom. 30 minutes later, I found the groom. He was at another venue, drunk and pissed because there was no setup for his wedding. I took him to the real venue and we started the ceremony. The bride was crying the entire time and she was taking distance from him. He was super drunk and still pissed. After the ceremony, he was telling me that it was my fault that he was like that. And his mom, of course, started screaming like a banshee at me for the same reason. She was gesticulating a lot while screaming, and when the bride approached us to calm the situation, she got hit by the mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law didn't apologize. She actually told her it was her fault for being in a bad mood and that she deserved it. Fast forward to the dinner, and the groom was even drunker, and the bride was nowhere to be seen. I searched for her to try to help, but found nothing. I went back to the dinner. 30 minutes later, I asked the hotel staff about the bride and if someone had seen her, and they told me to go to the front desk. I went there thinking that she might be in the lobby, but no, she actually left the resort on her wedding night, and the next day she flew back home. The groom and his family were pissed, and somehow all of this was the resort's fault. They were mad. They asked for a refund after the bride told the groom she wanted a divorce, the next day by phone, and they said it was all because she didn't like the wedding. 2 months later, they were divorced, and the bride pressed charges against the mother-in-law because she attacked her during the divorce hearing. I used to moonlight as a musician for hire in college and did more than a few weddings. I saw many that raised an eyebrow, but the two that really stood out as rough. The groom was super emotional and smiling when the bride first appeared at the church doors to walk down the aisle, and the bride was more interested in hollering at her family and friends as she made her way down the aisle. I don't think she looked at the groom once on her way down. You just saw his face drop as she got closer and had no interest in even looking at the man she was about to marry. The other, I had heard from the wedding planner, was that the bride and her bridesmaids had gone through at least 10 bottles of champagne throughout the morning and were all ridiculously drunk, and I had to keep playing no matter what happened. Well, 2 of the 3 bridesmaids fell and had trouble getting up on the way down the aisle. The bride and the maid of honor made it down the aisle but had great difficulty. The groom basically was holding the bride up for the entirety of the ceremony, and she very loudly refused a chair. Also, the flower girl looked a little green around the gills and threw up into her basket during the vows. I guess she was either given or sneaked some champagne as well. The wedding planner said they had argued the night before over whether they were going to drink before the wedding. The groom wanted to stay sober until the reception, but the bride disagreed. I ran into the planner at another wedding and she said they had a massive fight in the limo on the way to take pictures, which the bride's side of the wedding party was in no shape to participate in, so they skipped them. The photographer just ended up doing a goofy photo shoot with the groomsmen since they had already paid for photos. The bride and bridesmaids sat in the limo drinking more. When I showed up to the reception, the bride was passed out. The groom made an apology speech to the guests and got an Uber home alone. On a nicer note, I was playing in a church that was not air-conditioned in the middle of August, and the bride passed out from the heat. The groom caught her, laid her down super gently, ran and got a chair while someone got her some orange juice, and did the entire ceremony with her in the chair, and him on one knee next to her. It was super sweet, and she cried the entire time. Another time, someone actually did try to do the speak now or forever hold your peace, and the bride whipped around, cut the guy off, and said, "For the final time, no, I never have or never will want to be with you. Shut up and let me get married," kissed her groom on the cheek, and said cheerfully, "Now, let's get married." I wasn't able to get any background details on that one, though. Oh yes. Right off the bat, what should have tipped me off was that the groom's last name translated to literally Dick. His bride was the definition of a Bridezilla, forcing us to make accommodations on things we do as free courtesies that aren't actually paid for or included at all in the package she got. She got it in the end, but not before she made my life hell for a week while I was temping in the office. For her tasting, we had her table set up in our ballroom along with the tables of 4 other couples, all coming in at different times. My sister was her coordinator, and I was the butler on staff that day. This woman stole some flowers off another couple's table, then got mad when I took them from her table and put them back. Then she and her husband started running their mouths to their coordinator, who they loved and didn't know was my sister, about how I tried to tell them no and enforce company policy. How dare I do my job? My sister clapped back by calling me over and introducing me as her baby sister, and they immediately stammered out an apology. From there, it was mostly smooth sailing for me. But the reason we knew they were headed for a divorce was that the bride got wasted at her tasting because, LOL, it's free, and I want to know everything on your bar's menu. Within an hour, the trips to the bathroom started. Each time she went, the groom would not just flirt, but aggressively hit on every woman in the ballroom. The day of the wedding came around. The groom got into a fight with a groomsman that shattered one of our glass doors that led into the courtyard. The bride got drunk and spent most of the night crying in the bathroom. The groom ended up hooking up with a bridesmaid in the limo, where he was caught by his mother, which apparently is what started the fight with his groomsman. It was a total disaster like I've never seen before. They didn't even last the full honeymoon. The bride and her mother came back 3 days later demanding a refund because they were getting the marriage annulled. I've performed over 3,500 weddings. I rarely keep track of my success record because once they say, "I do" and pay me, that's as far as our contract goes. With that being said, there's a stark contrast between couples who are a really good match and couples who I don't see spending the rest of their lives putting up with crap. The good couples are there for each other. They are each other's rocks. Their words toward each other are kind. Their words about one another when separated are loving, understanding, and empathetic. You can tell their lives have melded so completely that when you talk to them separately before the ceremony, you sense something is missing from them. You see the completeness when they are standing together. Then there's the flip side of that coin. There's a groom who says unkind things, but only joking, like how she's always late or how she's probably gabbing with her bridesmaids. The bride will lightly berate her groom for not doing something or for doing the right thing the wrong way. You can tell they may have been good friends and maybe even good lovers. But lifelong partners? I see so many people go off to their respective best friends after that first kiss instead of holding on to one another like life depended on it. If you spend the majority of your wedding day hanging out with your buds, I can't predict the future, but that isn't promising. Lifelong partners must be unendingly kind to one another. I see so many people get into the trap of sarcasm. It's light and joking at first, but it always escalates. Sarcasm is a weed that will destroy relationships. If you find yourself getting into sarcasm with someone you love and you want to keep them, identify it and end it immediately. Sarcasm replaces important communication, like difficult talks you really need to have and settle. The best couples are the ones who are unafraid of being vulnerable with their feelings. They will tell me, almost like it's a secret, how weak and powerless they are in the face of the love they have for their significant other. Thanks for watching till the end, and don't forget to subscribe and like for more of these ridiculous stories. Love you all, and stay safe out there in that crazy world. Much love. Peace.